Well, hello there, YouTube, and welcome to another live virtual painting session. So this time we are going to be starting a pretty large canvas. It's not a huge canvas, but it's definitely larger than what you're used to on my YouTube channel. So you're looking at a 24 by 36 inch canvas. I know you couldn't see the top of the ruler there, but anyway, 24 by 36 inches. And this is taken from a previous modeling session that I had with this model that you've seen in many different paintings on my YouTube channel. So I tend to take probably about a good, I don't know, like 50 photo references and end up painting maybe like 10 or 15 of them. Usually kind of repeating the same model, so same kind of setup, but different pose. So since this is a little bit larger, my head, as you see, might get in the way of some of the footage, so I'm going to do the best that I can to prevent that. So hey, FV Can, thanks for watching from Turkey. So this is raw umber, and I have just thinned it out with a little bit of odorless mineral spirit. So this is Gamsol, and what I'm going to do is just apply very loosely, like a little thin wash of mineral spirits and raw umber, and then I'm going to draw right onto it. So the main topic for this live stream is going to be how to start a long-term painting. So what I've been doing before were short-term paintings. That's still life that I just finished. That's portrait sketch that I just finished. Those were short-term paintings. So short-term paint. Oh, look at that. Hey, Ronald Miller, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for your contribution to my YouTube channel. Definitely much appreciated. Ronald Miller, thank you. Hey, Ellen. So the main idea that I want to pass on here through demonstration is that when you start a long-term painting, you do not necessarily have to do it in such a way that you're carefully tracing a photograph and then trying to measure out all the angles or whatever. You can actually start fairly loose and fairly expressive, and the idea is open grisaille. So I think that's actually part of the title of this. Hey, Stephanie Thompson, thanks for watching from Virginia. I didn't notice how close you were. You're just one state away from me. I'm in Maryland. So the idea of open grisaille, and I think that's enough because I'm mainly going to be working this area here. So what is a grisaille? First of all, a grisaille is just basically the word gray. So a grisaille just means underpainting, but it technically stands for the word gray, but it's used, common terminology is for an underpainting. So what you're going to do is you're going to treat it just like any other sketch. So I'm getting an idea of where I want the model's head to be, very loosely, with very simple straight lines and angles. An idea of the placement of the head is quite important, but I want to have a general concept for the entire figure. So I want this to be fairly loose. I want to be able to move around and adjust things as I want to. Keeping the lines simple, moving with straight lines and angles is key. So this is a very loose and kind of rapid way of working, and it's how I usually prefer to work. I teach through the online classes. I actually teach through a much more methodical way of starting a painting, through very careful drawing in the umber sketch, much more careful than this, and more thought out than this. So this is definitely me using the technique that I personally use when I'm painting, but through a demonstration format. But this is not the way that I suggest that many beginners start. But it is a good idea to experiment with all kinds of different methods till you find what you like the most. So let's see here. Hey Juval, oh, thank you. I'm glad you like the photo reference. Angela. So the idea with this painting, before I get any further than these few little lines, is there's going to be many things in it, right? There's a hand here, there's a face, there's the hair, there's actually, you can't see it, but there's going to be some flowers probably somewhere down here. There's a picture frame next to her, so I actually like to put frames in here. So yeah, I'm going to do some streams consecutively of this painting, basically until you get bored of it, and then I have to start another one. But I'll keep working on this one on my own. This will definitely be a studio painting that I will work on for a long time. But the idea is, however long it's going to take me to complete this, I want you to get an idea of what freedom means in classical oilist paint, oilist. See, I can't even talk. In classical realist painting, classical realist oilist. Oh my God, classical realist oil painting, and a good resource to look at for motivation for this kind of painting is Studio Incominati in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Nelson Shanks, who is my superhero, would definitely start his paintings very loose. And when I studied there at Studio Incominati, I did hundreds of loose figure sketches there. And if you're curious about learning figure painting and all that stuff, I definitely teach that in the online classes. But it's not something I can really teach in a format like this, but I will explain as much as I can to you, of course. So let's see. Hey, Michael Jones, thanks for joining. It's your first time here. Welcome. So this is just a virtual painting session, Michael, and please feel free to ask any questions, art-related questions during the duration of this stream. Also, I do these streams every Tuesday and Saturday, not Saturday, oh my gosh, I'm getting confused here. Every Tuesday and Thursday. Saturdays for my online students on Patreon. I will get those confused from time to time, so I apologize for confusion in the schedule. So Tuesday and Thursdays around 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time is what the schedule will be for these YouTube public virtual painting sessions. But these are not meant to be like free lessons or anything like that. But I won't hold back information. If you want to know something, I'm not going to keep it from you. I will explain as much as I can while I'm painting. So as you see, I'm kind of starting to hone in on the head very quickly. In a matter of like 10 minutes or so, I got an idea of the placement of the head, the arms, the torso, the curve of the rib cage relative to the iliac crest, relative to the pelvis. I've got an idea of where that picture frame is going to go, and some zigzags over here for where I want some flowers to go. And there may be some reptiles in here. Yes, reptiles, because I do. I have a painting series that I'm doing where there are like a series of paintings of humans and reptiles in harmony, basically. So some of that may end up in this painting. So let me look at the big angles. So when it comes to the basic block-in, the head shape, the head size in a normal setup. The perspective is not very difficult here. I'm just looking right at the model. One head length down is usually the chest. Usually, unless the model is taller or something like that. So I have to imagine that somewhere down over here is the model's chest. Even though I can't see the model's chest because she's turned, I have to assume it would be there. So now I'm going to just focus much more with the head shape. And we'll probably get into some color, maybe not too much, but some basic proportions for the features of the face and things like that. And then maybe we'll start to block in some stuff for the shoulders and the hands. I'm not sure about the dress, but we'll see. She's wearing a green dress. So like I said, open grisaille. Again, what it means is a closed grisaille is where you cover the entire surface with your underpainting colors. Monochromatic complete value scale is a closed grisaille. Just a little terminology for you. Open grisaille is where you leave the lights open and then you go in with color. That's what an open grisaille is. But of course, terminology doesn't quite matter as much. What matters is an understanding of the basic techniques, the basic concepts. The idea being that you want to be free. Freedom is the main key here. Freedom is the main expression. The main goal is to be able to be free and not to paint in such a way that it's taxing on you. You can move things easily if you keep it loose and workable like this. The goal is to be able to have enough experience where you're not afraid to make changes. Working with simple light and dark shapes is vital for this start. I'm going to make a big educated mess, and then I'm going to work with those shapes. There's a very pre-Raphaelite kind of mood to this painting, very pre-Raphaelite in its setup. And that's the kind of layout I was kind of going for, or the kind of theme I was going for when I was taking these photo references. So a little bit of the back side of the scapula, right behind the hair. Right over there would be the clavicle turning in towards the shoulder. So there's not too many marks there for that. Now obviously the dress, there's some folds of the dress that are a little difficult to see. And the reference is actually cropped somewhere. Let me look at my... I can't actually see what you're seeing right now. So yeah, so it's actually cropped right underneath of the pelvis. But you can still see most of the information here. So this gives us the twist for the rib cage. Okay, big old shadow here, decorative element up here. So think about the head as just a head, like whatever, it's just a head. And if something goes wrong with it in this stage, I can move it. But like I said, at some point, the head is going to be the thing that we're going to focus more attention on. Alright, so I'm going to stop talking so much now and give you a chance to ask questions. If you have any questions. Thanks again, Ronald Miller, for the super chat. So I don't think anyone has asked this question, but I'm assuming it'll be asked. Why raw umber, and why is it not with all the other colors on my palette? What's raw umber doing there? And raw umber, I consider it a drawing color. I do not consider it a color to mix and make other colors from. So I really only have it there for the drawing, because I don't feel like mixing up that much brown color myself. So I have the raw umber there for that reason. And raw umber just dries faster than mixing ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Hey, Michael Jones. Oh, good. I'm glad that you found this through the Zorn palette videos. And yeah, the Zorn palette is really good for learning the basics of mixing color. Okay. And one could probably argue that you could just use the Zorn palette for most normal light condition setups. But in fact, the Zorn palette is something that you want to actually eventually expand from. But it's a good place to start. Hey Ronald, do you naturally just see proportions now, or do you still use the basics for human proportion? A little bit of both. I mean, like the basic setup here would be the head measurement. So like one head down should roughly give me where the chest is. And if this is the chromium process for the shoulder, then it's not too far-fetched that the chest line, even though it's hidden, would be somewhere over here. So it's a mix. It is intuitive, and I do see the proportions, but I do still rely on anatomy to place the parts. But the more you do it, the more intuitive it will become. So I think that's good. At least for today. I don't think I'll have the time to get into all the stuff, surrounding the model. So now we're gonna just stick with the head and maybe some of the surrounding skin tones. So I'm just gonna continue the umber sketch, take it as far as I can, and then I'll start to get into color. A good question, Ronald. There's some artists that in their teaching they usually say that they don't measure, and that's like Robert Liberace, who many of you most likely know of. He is known to just go right in and feel out the proportions. Nelson Shanks was another, of course, my superhero. But one could argue that working with simple straight lines and angles like this is already a form of measurement. The only difference is we don't break out a ruler and start to, divide and conquer. Angela, I wonder how you get used to holding the brush. Suppose it's painting a lot. Yeah, try to hold the brush as far back as possible. But I know you must be painting like that. With the way that your class projects are turning out, you are definitely learning a lot. So if you're wondering why I keep moving my head down, it's because I'm too lazy to, I'm looking at the comments through my iPad. I need another tripod to hold my iPad still, but don't mind me when I look down. Although you might think I'm mixing on my palette. Hey Paul, I'm glad you appreciate the videos. And Mr. Iron Hex, you don't measure anything ever. And that's one way to work, but I think a balance is always good to have. Sargent would actually use sight size. I know many of you here are fans of John Singer Sargent. So he would have the model like right next to his painting so that the model was the same size visually as the painting. And it's important to be able to transition from that like the rapidity, I guess, of the fluid brush marks, transitioning from that kind of like almost chaotic, like quick motions everywhere to slowing down. That's where we're at now. We're slowing down. I'm using a piece of paper towel as my eraser. At Studio and Caminati, they definitely are more expressive for a longer period of time. I tend to get things blocked in quickly and then slowly go right into the block in. I'm more meticulous earlier on than most in that kind of background. Although I haven't been to Uncommon in a long time, so it could be things are different now. It's just a dry brush. So I'm actually waiting a little bit because the mineral spirits that I put on here will eventually start to kind of fade. Once it fades, it'll be easier for me to apply color onto this. And I will do a lot of drawing with color. Okay. The one thing I see here is that the placement for the mouth is off relative to the eyes and nose. which, as I always say, keep your shapes simple and easy. So that's when the time comes to make changes. Those changes are simple and easy to manage. So let's go ahead and move the mouth up slightly. And if I'm afraid to move things while the painting is only like 15 minutes old or whatever, I guess it's been 26 minutes now. Has it really been 26 minutes? So, you know, if I'm afraid to move things in like under an hour, there's a problem. So, if you're afraid to move stuff in your painting after less than an hour, you've got to change something about the methodology of which you are placing down your shapes. Hey Barbara, oh good, I'm glad you liked the virtual classroom from today. Yeah, I'm starting, well, I guess it's been 2 weeks now, I'm not even sure, but yeah, I've been doing these virtual painting sessions Tuesdays and Thursdays around 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I think I've got it down now. I've got a system down so that I can get everything I need to get done on Tuesdays and Thursdays and still be able to make these videos for YouTube. Another thing to mention about measuring is it's good to know generalizations and it's good to know the basics of the human construct. So, you know, it's not like I'm just throwing some stuff down and it's just I've had so much experience that things just land in the right place all the time. It's that, you know, like she's almost profile. She's 3/4, but she's almost profile. If she wasn't perfect profile, then the average would be the top of the head down to the chin is usually the front of the skull down to the back side of her head. Obviously, there's still some distance left there, but it's almost that proportion, as you see here with my hand. So it's important to know the basics. Yeah, definitely. You can definitely paint along with me, Barbara, just like we did in the older times back in 2020. Alright, so I've moved up the mouth ever so slightly, and relative to the chin, the mouth was a little off. The distance between the bottom middle of the nose and the top of the upper lip is very important. So make sure you know exactly where you've placed the bottom middle of the nose. And know where your mark is for the top middle of the upper lip. Alright, so this is starting to, yep, starting to fade out. The mineral spirits and the raw umber I just put to help move the paint a little more freely. Oh, good. We got 2 questions in here. So, comment from Edward. So you spent 2 hours drawing a portrait with paint and ended up not liking the product because everything was too small. So now you're doing it all over again. So it's a good idea to expect that things are going to be moving a lot, Edward and everyone else. Things are going to move a lot in the beginning, so try and keep it as workable as possible. But that scenario that you just mentioned is actually not that uncommon. I find that happens with me all the time. I always find that there's stuff, no matter how hard I try, there's stuff that I need to move. A comment from Ronald Miller. The human face tends to vary the most, it seems to me. That's what gives us our own distinct look. That's true, but it's also very close. So very similar, and the closeness of one human face to another human face is why that term doppelganger is a thing. So it's important to hone in on the specifics that make us different from others, but don't dwell on it either. It's a painting first and a portrait second for me. Now I'm gonna have to put some stuff in here for the hand. So this is just that dry brush. See how I'm trying to go for a very fine line now. And I find that this is the most difficult part in starting a painting. It is the basic arrangement and how to get the basic arrangement of elements placed in your painting. And for many years I would draw much more carefully than this. And I found that sometimes the more careful drawings, the more careful starts end up being the worst starts. In that I always get too attached to my careful drawing, and sometimes just being loose and considering it just like a series of sketches superimposed on each other. Somehow the painting just ends up becoming more natural. So Ronald Miller, you tend to elongate necks. Well, it's not too bad of a tendency, actually. If you look at a lot of classical paintings, Sargent in particular would elongate things all the time. He would elongate hands, I think, the most. So if you look very closely at some Sargent hands, you'll actually see where he has, I'd say deliberately because he's Sargent, deliberately elongated things, especially like I said, the hands. But next too, I think he would. If you look at El Jaleo, the painting El Jaleo, he's definitely elongated that arm, the overextending arm in El Jaleo. So I need to figure out exactly what's going on with this hand. So this is the model's right hand. So the thumb is actually resting on her chest. You can't quite see too much of the fingers. So elongating is actually a better tendency than the opposite. If you truncate, if you make it too short, that tends to be a little less aesthetically appealing. Okay, so it looks like I've got this too wide. And the thumb was too narrow. And I find that it's easier to work larger with figure. Like I said, I've started teaching figure painting. I call it figure painting black and white for my online students. And I use figure paintings from old master paintings to teach that project, to teach that course. And so it consists of and I do it on Wednesdays. So Wednesdays is the short-term projects, and Saturdays is the long-term with my online students. And what we do is we start figure paintings like this, but we do it in black and white, and we go in with a very anatomical type approach, but loose. So last week was the intro to larger format figure, and I did it exactly the same as this. Sketching in some of the folds for the drapery. Actually, it took a while for one of those comments to come in, so let's do what we do. Okay. So that comment was taken care of. Hey David, so yeah, there's definitely going to be some proportional things that aren't correct here just yet. Also, another thing you need to, and thanks for reminding me of this, another thing everyone needs to take into account is that you are looking at the painting from a camera that is at an angle. So this is what the painting looks like, or the drawing looks like. With minimal distortion, this would be almost no distortion. But the problem is I can't paint like this because that's a glare. That's a huge glare for me, so that is something to consider. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of proportional things, so you don't need to point them out. I'm going to eventually get to them, but it's not going to be a perfect replica at all. Okay, scapula. Let's see. Okay, so next to the drapery. And like I said, when I get into color, like things like the neck being longer, things like that, or whatever, it's something I can correct if I want to, or if I like the way it looks, I'll just leave it like that. Oh, great, Barbara, I'm glad. Remember that the Wednesday and Saturday online lessons for students is as a dedicated lesson. This I don't really explain as much because I can't in this kind of short-term format. But yeah, definitely paint with me, draw with me. Okay, alright, so that should be good. Now what I'm going to do is use up the rest of my raw umber because it's not really a color that I want to use for mixing. So let's use it up. And this is that picture frame. Now when I get into this later on, whether I stream the details of the picture frame or not, I'm probably going to go into it with a T-square. Like I said, since this is intended to be like a long-term studio painting, I'm not going to be able to stream everything. Hey David, oh thank you. Okay, so there's, so this is a picture frame. I'm probably going to invent something. I'm not sure what to put here, but definitely something, maybe reptile themed is going to go in here. Like I said, the flowers are going to go down here. And there's going to be a big mass of dark right under here. So now obviously I could save the raw umber that's on my palette if I want to, but I'd rather just use it up. Sometimes it takes a lot of courage to just be able to go and put in a big broad section of paint like this. I know it takes a lot of courage for me to be able to do that. There's something very aesthetic about it, I don't know. You could almost guesstimate that there'd be like a fade, like it's lighter up here and then darker down here. Flowers of all sorts are gonna go over here. And you see the hip is actually lifted here. The iliac spine, the side of the pelvis should be pointing out right there. She's actually in a contrapposto pose, even though it's very difficult to tell. Okay, so that's about good. That's the main objective actually for this virtual painting session. But I'm still gonna do some more stuff. I want to block in some skin color. Very loosely though. I'm getting the raw umber off my palette. Now that we're gonna get into color, I need to clarify something that is a reoccurring theme in the comments of my videos. And that is, why does the color always look different on the palette than on the painting? Number one, the palette is a natural wood color. The palette is a wooden color, and the canvas is not made out of wood, and it's not a wooden color. The canvas is gray, the palette is wood. Therefore, it's not going to look the same when I mix a color here and I place a color down here. As you see, they will not look the same. But the natural wooden color of this palette is traditionally what the old masters used. It's what classical painters use more than a gray palette, for example, on average from what I've seen in my experience. And I just like the tradition of having a wooden palette. And I absolutely do not suggest it would be a good idea for you to have your palette, a big gray palette, next to your painting while you're painting. That is only for demonstration purposes or for tutoring purposes. But what I want to do, the purpose of this, is to show you how I paint without the the notion of it being specifically academic. So I want you to actually get a feel for the real painting experience, not so much a YouTube tutorial of how to do something. And the educational aspect of this will come from your questions. So I will be able to respond to your questions in ways that I wouldn't be able to have this been a pre-recorded video. So let's introduce a question now for the audience, and I'm going to start with an easy one, a basic one. What is currently on your palette at this moment? What are the colors on your palette? And if your palette is clean, you clean off your palette every day. You can comment that too. I just want to know if people are keeping paints on their palettes. I do suggest that you do keep paints on there. I know it's a common question that I tend to always ask, but we usually get some new viewers once in a while, and I want to have give the new viewers a chance to share. So I'm using a lot of burnt sienna, Viridian. I just used a little bit of cadmium red. Now going for the midtones of the face. Edward Soto, right now on your palette, you have just burnt umber, your favorite color for painting. Awesome. Yeah, burnt umber is a very beautiful color on its own. So Angela, you have burnt sienna, white, black, yellow ochre. It's pretty good. Ronald Miller, you haven't done any painting for a while. Done nothing. That means you clean your palette. That's good. I usually will recommend leaving the color palette on the edge of your palette here, so that it's like muscle memory, like keys to a piano. I'm using cadmium green. So Brian Wong, Cad Red, Cad Yellow, Ultra Blue, Burnt Umber. Ooh, Transparent Red Oxide, that's a good one. Yellow Ochre and good old Titanium White. Very good. I'm going and pushing the color a little more. This painting is in its infancy right now, so I'm free to experiment with as much color as I want. Always room to refine it later. And I'm purposefully keeping you zoomed out of the face. Don't think I'm just trying to be mean to you. I'm just trying to show you what I want out of this basic, let's just say, blocking of color in a limited amount of time. The idea is I'm pretending like this model is posing from life. And that's a very critical element. The pace at which you work, certainly don't rush it, but a little bit of immediacy is a good thing to have when you're working from a photo reference. And that's just because the photo reference has the tendency of making one become very stagnant and too slow and too methodical. Whereas when you're painting from life, there's more of a spontaneity, usually. There's more of a sense of immediacy because you know the model's not going to be there all day. Hey, Catherine. I'm glad you're enjoying the live stream. Hey, not how many hours a week do you spend painting? That's a good question. I wish I had an answer for that one. I paint every day except for Sunday and Monday. Sundays and Mondays I'm usually out rollerblading. So I try to separate myself from my work as much as possible. So pretty much full time except for Sunday and Monday. So pretty much like somewhat close to your typical 40-hour work week. With some exceptions, like sometimes I spend more time editing on the computer, but other times, you know, like things turn up. So full-time hours, like a full-time job. I just don't post as many of the progress pictures anymore. But as you can see, this is like a full-time palette, so always something going on. And I do paint on Zoom. I have Zoom painting sessions with my students. Fridays I do one-on-one, so individual Zoom, and Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time I do group Zoom painting session. And now, of course, you have Tuesdays and Thursdays. So a lot of my painting hours, not all of them, but a nice chunk of them are actually on camera. But you gotta stay balanced. That's my #1 advice to those of you that want to be full-time artists, or you're full-time artist yourself. You gotta stay balanced. even if you love what you do, if you're doing the same thing 7 days a week all the time, you're going to burn out. So good to have a balance. What is your opinion about Instagram for artists? Good question. Instagram is a great resource to use to promote your artwork, but it's kind of an addictive platform for some people that may go on Instagram and spend hours and hours looking at different paintings and comparing themselves to other artists. It's got its good qualities and its drawbacks, like anything. The biggest drawback to Instagram, in my opinion, is the addictiveness of it. Some people would just be on it all day. Do you know anyone personally, from the moment they wake up from bed to the moment they go to sleep, you imagine they're on their phone looking at social media? That's the biggest danger to any platform. But it's a good place to promote your artwork, I think. Oh, thanks, Randy. Hey, Edward, what's the weirdest thing you do while painting a portrait? I have a conversation with myself while being silent, so I'll move my hands and everything without saying anything. I think the weirdest thing that I do when painting, not just a portrait, but just painting in general, is a lot of people already know this about me and kind of make fun of me about it, which is totally fine. I will watch TV shows at the same time that I'm painting because I need some kind of distraction. Like for example, like right now I'm talking, I'm doing a YouTube public live stream with people watching live, and I like to be able to have something, a slight distraction while I'm painting. Maybe that's just a caveat of being born in the 90s to be like that, but I think that's probably the weirdest thing. People are like, what? Like, I was just watching Ozark on Netflix while I was painting like 2 hours ago. I finished all of Supernatural, all 15 seasons, while painting. But I wouldn't say it's weird that you talk to yourself while you're painting. I mean, a lot of people talk to themselves while they're studying or doing some kind of puzzle or whatever. Einstein was known to talk to himself. Okay, so you don't do that as much anymore because you do detailed stuff. I almost need more distraction when I'm doing detailed stuff. Like, it's just a focus thing. So I'm actually layering, not layering, but I'm applying paint rather thin. Um, so I'm utilizing the fact that there was some mineral spirits on there. And this will definitely be dry, workable enough by Thursday. Well, I hope so. Last time I said that I actually painted 2 too thick. Hey Phyllis, why/when to use mineral spirits on the canvas? In the beginning, and that's the only time, unless you're talking about oiling out the painting, which you can use mineral spirits mixed with cold pressed linseed oil. I use spike lavender though for that. So I used it in this in the start of this so that when I went in and started drawing with big brush marks, that they would flow a little more easily. And the reason you use it to oil out is because you don't want to just put straight up linseed oil. So you want to mix linseed oil with some kind of solvent. Yep. Oh, so why is this called Grisaille method? Grisaille stands for gray. Grisaille is also synonymous with underpainting. So that's why it's called a grisaille, because it's an underpainting. So yes, Phyllis, grisaille is traditionally black and white because grisaille means gray. Open and closed grisaille are two different things. So closed grisaille is when you underpaint the entire thing in monochrome, which we're not doing. Open grisaille is when you leave the lights open. So this is open grisaille method. So I left this open and then just went right in with color. And it's not a very safe method to use if you're just starting out with painting. But it's a faster, more efficient way. I actually have my students do closed grisaille, and we actually do use just white and raw umber, so that's a closed grisaille. So I don't have my students jump into color this quickly. So notice that I am not like right in front of the painting like this because my head would be obnoxious in the way. So I'm at an arm's length, if not even further, away from the painting. And the reason you are at that distance is because I want you to see as I'm seeing. Yep, no problem, Phyllis. Alright, let's see, we got another question coming in. So, A block is a 1. So, if when I'm painting with oil paints and the paints seem to be sliding around rather than sticking to the canvas, does that mean that the canvas has too much gesso or is bad quality? That's actually not a bad thing if the colors are sliding around, but if it's sliding around so much, I would double check if you are using like higher quality materials. So, for example, the gesso. If you're going to use acrylic, an acrylic ground, then obviously it's going to have to be gessoed. So, um, make sure that you use Liquitex Professional Acrylic Gesso. That is the best gesso I would suggest for using an acrylic ground. If you're using an oil primed ground, like an oil primed linen like this, it is a little more slick than a cotton canvas. So maybe it's just getting used to the material. Another thing it could be is the quality of the oil paints. So if you're using like student grade oil paints, then they're probably going to be a little slick. Brian Wong, what colors am I using for the face? I wish I could tell you. First, it started off with burnt sienna, Viridian, and white. That was maybe this was that. And then I started just going in all over the place. It's mainly burnt sienna, alizarin permanent, cadmium red, lead tin yellow, cadmium orange, viridian, and cobalt blue, and ultramarine blue as well. I'm not using Perelyne Red, this one right here, because it's super slow drying. So I'm kind of avoiding the very slow drying colors. Yep, no problem, Catherine. Let me know. Oh, thank you. Thanks for your comment. Thanks for watching from Holland. And I haven't put the shadow tone in yet, and I don't think I will. I will leave it just the tone of the canvas and the raw umber. So I like to build the thing from the inside out. So I'm basically building this painting from the inside out. So I'm not starting out with the superficial, very careful, detailed things, nor am I starting out with just a big blob of skin tone. I'm starting from the middle stages outwards. And I will tell you, I do not think heavily about what colors I'm using. I go by feel. I want the painting process to be as intuitive as I can make it. There's a certain look that the paintings have when you work that way. Alright, so next question for everyone, which is going to be a simple one. Another simple question. What is currently on your easel? Question for everyone. What is currently on your easel? Comment from David Bonnet. What? Any recommendation for anatomy learning? Okay, so for learning anatomy for art, it's actually a good idea to draw from life as much as you can. If it's difficult to find a place where you can draw from life, then I would definitely suggest looking up some online resources where you can find places where they have I guess reference photos of models for figure painting. As far as like books and educational stuff, honestly, I think the best is probably a medical book, or like just look up the medical illustrations of the body. For example, like suppose I was confused about the anatomy of the shoulder. I'm not going to quickly go and look up Bridgman book on the anatomy of the shoulder. Nothing wrong with it at all. It's just I want to look at what like physicians look at for the shoulder and look at the anatomy for the shoulder. And I just Google search it. To be honest, just look for any kind of information on Google. Like where does the acromion process connect with the clavicle, and how does the deltoid muscle look, and what does it do? All of that stuff is important, but also its anatomy is there to help you place the parts. That's what my teachers would always tell me, and it's really true. Anatomy is just there to help you place the parts. But don't use anatomy to tell you how to describe the thing or how to paint the thing. It's just there to help you place the parts. And of course, I'm teaching anatomy in my figure painting courses in my online classes too. But I know that you may have other favorites online that are teaching the same content. A real art from. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that comment. And Mano, yep, intuitive is the way to go. Hey Brian Wong, an incomplete landscape painting is on your easel. Landscape paintings are good. So for example, artist anatomy books, some of them will say that the basic human proportion is we are on average seven skulls down from our head to our feet. And of course they write on average because it's just an average, but that kind of thinking actually helps to get an idea of how to start. But just the fact that you know that an average human body is 7 skulls from top to bottom doesn't mean that your model that you're painting is going to be like that. Hey David. So for the form, you really want to work from observation for the form, not necessarily from an anatomy book, because the anatomy books are illustrated to just generalize, and it's there to explain what it is, but you have to describe it. Yep, Randy, that's exactly. Paint it as you see it; it will come naturally. Also, there is a time to like sit and look up like the bones of the shoulder, the bones of the hands, the muscles, and all that stuff. That's good research mode, but be as intuitive as you can, and just don't treat it very methodically, at least in the beginning. Suppose you've spent maybe like, I don't know, like 20 hours on a painting, and then there's a good time to slow down and start to really describe things. But even, I'll tell you a secret. If you can get to a point in painting where the finishing stuff, the refining stuff, you're standing back and you're placing brush strokes down, that's the most liberating experience I can ever tell you. Like, I'm almost there. I'm not entirely there because I do get stressed sometimes in the finishing stages. But if you can get to a point where the entire process, from beginning to end, is just a continuous flow, that's where you want to be. That's super fun. That's like the most fun painting could ever be, because you've gotten the technique stuff down intuitively, and what you're doing is now just creating and describing a story in your art. Technique is nothing more than a language to depict your story. But language doesn't tell you what story to tell. You need to be able to convey your point across, so you need technique, you need your language. Once you have adapted a proficiency for conveying what you want to convey, you can start to really speak in your paintings. If that analogy makes any sense. Oh, good. I'm glad I inspire you to start painting portraits, Brian. William Penn, why don't you mix your colors with a knife? So I do mix my colors with palette knife when I'm doing color study. When I teach color study to my students, I do mix with a knife. For this painting, I'm not mixing with a palette knife because I don't want to have a big, thick, bold color. I want the colors to be kind of a mix mash of many other colors, and that's just the way that I want it to look. Now, mixing your colors with a palette knife is a very bold way of having very rich and strong colors. Very much a la Henry Henchy, a la Impressionist type way of seeing colors. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I also want it to be very thin, something that I can build on. Yep, no problem, William. speaking of bony landmarks or anatomy, um, for the neck and the back, the 7th cervical vertebra is basically like the most important little notch on the back of the back. So I'm actually trying to make a little note to myself of where that would be. So Minna, what kind of lighting are you using? Is daylight the best choice? North light would be the best choice, which is daylight, because north light is more controlled. It's also very difficult to obtain. You need a north-facing window that's a skylight to have north light. So in a perfect world, I would use north light. Obviously, I can't do that at night because it's nighttime. So I'm using a LED light, newer NL660 LED light, but you can use whichever daylight, LED light you want. LED light is consistent. A lot of them are dimmable. You can adjust the color temperatures on them. If you're like thinking of a consistent light that's something you can use for hours at a time, then LED lights are the best. Great question. I do appreciate the questions. Yep, no problem. I like when you ask questions because I don't have to try to think a lot about what I should say. It's easier. So yeah, ask all the art related questions you like. You make it easier for me because I don't have to try to figure out what to say or what, the dialogue. Hey Larry Brown, this is the first time you got the live feed. Just started my classes and enjoy these videos. Oh, awesome! I'm glad you're just tuning in and that you're in the classes. So remember, those of you in the online classes, definitely utilize that Patreon messenger. As I always say in the lessons, I check my messenger as frequently as I can from Tuesday to Saturday, and I do mean it. I will respond to you in a timely manner. I've been consistently good at that, so I do my best to make sure to get to all the questions. Michael Jones, you just found some 20-year-old tubes of paint. They seem fine. Do you think they will be okay to paint with? Well, it depends. I mean, if it's like a burnt umber, it might be dry in the tube a little bit, but you can always add some extra linseed oil because it's just pigment and oil, and sometimes there's something more in there like alkyd, but it's just pigment and oil, so you should be able to paint with them. And if it's kind of like, if the paint tube is kind of stiff, you can add some drops of linseed oil. If I found some 20-year-old tubes of paint, I'd probably keep them and put them in a in a display. You know, like 20-year-old paint tubes are definitely not easy to find. Also, as I mix these colors, um, I'm very much mixing kind of thin proportions of color at a time. So we've got another one of those commenters. I think this might be a real person, so you're gonna get reported. Blocked, banned, reported. I'm reporting you for hate speech. Alright. You've been blocked, you've been banned, and your YouTube channel has been reported to YouTube for hate speech. Congratulations. You are a winner today. Alright, let's see here. A question from Stephanie. Is there a special technique for painting folds in clothing? Drapery. Not so much of a special technique, but light and shadow. Light and shadow is the biggest thing with the folds of clothing. But there are some glazing techniques that are useful too. So, comment from William Penn. I usually switch brushes between lights and darks to keep the colors from being muddy. You have a better technique because it always gets messy. I'm honestly just using one light and one dark, as you can see here. I mean, I was using this brush for the umber, but the best advice I can give you is, apart from having a brush for light and for dark, try to kind of organize where you're mixing on your palette. I used to call them color value webs or something like that. Some people call them strings. But just kind of like, if this is the big puddle of light, then this is the big puddle of light. If this is the big puddle of dark, then this is the big puddle of dark, kind of thinking. A cast shadow on the thumb. All of it's still very thin. Oh, right. And another common question that I've been getting, I guess not so much on YouTube, but on Instagram, is, am I doing any commissions? At the moment, I am accepting commissions, but only through in person. So if you are somewhere in Maryland or Virginia or wherever, you want a portrait commissioned of yourself or someone you know, I will go. Well, first I'll send you the prices, and then I'd have to be the one taking the photo references. But I'm not currently taking any commissions from like family photographs, for example, or things like that. Currently not. But I mean, it is my aim. I think I've mentioned this so many times in the past. I do want to be able to travel and do professional commission portrait paintings of like judges and senators and all kinds of like official portraits. Let's use the good old fan brush to make sure nothing dries too sharp. So I'm going to paint for another couple minutes and I think this will be good for today. This also makes sure that this ensures that nothing dries too thick. I do want to keep working on this on Thursday. So remember everyone, the schedule for these streams, Tuesdays and Thursdays around 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. To be more specific, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There's a scapula. So obviously the uh, dress is a little low on the arm, not so much on the back, but on the arm. And I'll probably go and block that in with color next time. Or not, we'll see. The main focus for next time is most likely going to be centered up here. I'll maybe do just 2 streams on the face, maybe 2 streams on the rest of this stuff over here. And depending on what you want to see, I'll probably just end up painting the rest of it on my own. But if you really do want to see the continuation of this on YouTube, just let me know. Just comment. Let me know in the future if you're bored of this painting. I can start another one. And then you can see the finished result on Instagram. Okay, so let's just cover very thin down to the arm. I didn't use any extra medium today. Obviously lead white is, it takes more of it to create a thick mixture, so I can get away with kind of scraping away with the brush with lead white. Bunch of different colors used in the skin tones, but primarily in the beginning I used just burnt sienna, lead white, Viridian, Cobalt Blue. So that's good for now. I'm gonna drop the brushes. We will continue this on Thursday. Oops, alright. So let's see if there's any last questions. I'm going to hang out for a couple minutes, see if there's any last minute questions here. Oh, that's weird. Looks like my chat froze. Oh, wow, look at that. My chat froze. So it froze from... Oh, wow. So it froze from the point of William switching brushes between light and dark. Okay, so I apologize for that. I'm looking at the comments through my iPad, so let me go ahead and catch up on the comments. Sorry, I wasn't ignoring you. I just didn't see it. So, David Bonnet, light and shadow, thin or dark for clothing and hair. I try to go thicker with the light and thinner in the shadow. Edward Soto, okay, I just finished drawing everything. Took me 3 tries. Awesome. It usually takes me more than that. Menno, personal note, I was overwhelmed with emotions at the Mark Rothko exhibition. Ground shaking. Thank you for sharing. Larry Brown, do you ever use Liquin Original? I do use Liquin from time to time to glaze, but usually I use Neo-Megilp. So Omni Panda, I really like this pose. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you like the pose. So Randy, I do on the last coat, makes it shine. Ashley, it's coming along nicely. First stream I was able to join. Looking forward to turning into future streams. And of course, thank you so much for joining for your first time here. Remember, the schedule for these public painting sessions are Tuesdays and Thursdays around 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. T. Augusto, I do. Please let us watch it through. Of course, you know, if I have enough viewers interested in, you know, continuing this painting, I will continue it. But if not, don't worry, you will see the finished result on Instagram. So Leonie Knowles, I would like to see more. Okay, yep, of course. You know, if the viewers are here, if I can keep these live streams going, then I will continue this painting. If not, of course, we can start another one. It's no problem. Let's see. Let's see. David Bonnet, thank you. So from Stephanie Thompson, oh, thank you, of course, for joining. Omni Panda, how do you deal with painter's block? The good question, and honestly, the best thing is perspective and time off. Give yourself time off so you can get perspective on your artwork. It's so important. I give myself 2 days of solid not working on my painting, and I pursue my hobbies, which at this moment is aggressive inline skating, or called rollerblading. I go to skate parks like every Sunday and Monday. That's how I keep myself from painter's block. So Randy, what size canvas? This is 24 by 36 inches. Michael Jones, yep, I answered the question about Liquin. I do use it, but I tend to use Neo-Megilp more. So Leonie Knowles, thank you for watching. William Penn, thank you. I'm glad you liked the stream. Michael Jones, yeah, definitely for the most part, very. It was a really nice and respectful chat. Of course, a couple people wanted to tear my head off, but that's okay. That's life, you know. Hey, Catherine. Oh, thank you. I know, I agree. Good luck to everyone. Oh, yes, and before I leave, I'm going to turn this canvas. So I'm going to turn it so you can see it with less distortion. Let me see here. So that looks about right. Okay, so there it is. You're seeing the start of this painting with less distortion. And Omni Panda, yes, you are correct. I will be back on Thursday around 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. And sorry about my chat box freezing up on me on my iPad. I was wondering why I wasn't getting any comments. Hey, Sad Hill, thank you. Alright, so that is it. That is the conclusion of today's virtual painting session. Remember, if you enjoyed watching this and my other videos, and you would like to take your painting education with me further, please consider checking out my online classes, which is linked in the comment posted on here, also in the description box of this video. Again, the online classes start out at just $10 a month. Again, I wish you all the very best in all of your artwork. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.